important theme we have for today, because worldwide and throughout history, many of the conflicts in the world had and still having to do with religion and certainly also culture. So religion traditionally through the ages play a role in conflict. And therefore it's quite important that we reflect on our traditions and conflict. I'm from the Christian tradition, and if I think back about the Christian tradition, there's different messages that came through the ages. Although all the different branches, different groups of the Christian tradition will all say we stand with Scripture, our interpretation, as many of you will know, can be very different. We may quote from the First Testament and say an eye for an eye, or we may quote from the Second Testament, the New Testament, and say don't take revenge. So we are full of examples where the tradition itself was involved and still is involved in conflict. One of the known conflict was around 1050 when the church divided between the East Orthodox and the Western Church. Around the cities of Constantinople, as it was known then, and Rome. Quite a conflict and a division in the church that still, 1,000 years later, still relevant, although in the last 100 years or so there was a lot of attempts to bring the groups closer to each other. Then you may know of the Christian Crusades, which is a very dark part of the Christian history, and it was for about 3 centuries where Christians went out to everybody that's not Christian and tried to convince them to become Christians, but in a military way, not what we would today would find acceptable. And then, as you may know, in around 500 years ago, around 1500, the division between what is known as the Catholic Church, which was the first church, and then what's known as the Reformation, and the conflict and violence. As you will know, a lot of people that came to South Africa, the French Huguenots, was because of that, if I can say, war, but violence between the groups in Europe. So the history is full of conflict within our tradition. Also, the viewpoints and standpoints of the church around war is dubious, and many parts of the church didn't support pacifism, for instance. But I have to move on and say something about unity and peace. But when I say it with, if I can call it, humbleness of the tradition that was always also embroiled in violence. The one word we use in the New Testament for peace is also used for unity, the same translation. The word irene in the Second Testament, the New Testament. So the translation is sometimes unity, sometimes peace. And we know that the Hebrew word shalom, and I'm sure you will say more about it, is about peace and wholeness and to make whole. There's many parts of the gospel that's about peace, and those of you that may know some parts of the gospels will know that the angels sing peace on earth. Paul called congregations to say you will call to peace, you must strive for peace, and etc. So peace definitely featured prominently in our scripture. So I thought, and this will be my last point, but it may be a long point. How many minutes I've got? I've got 4 minutes. I will try it. So, based on a large part of the teachings in the Christian tradition, I just sketched to you that in the tradition often violence was part of how we as Christians behaved. But in our scriptures, the teachings are actually, from my perspective, very clear that we should support peace and unity. And I'm going just to mention in the next few minutes some of them. The teachings are very clear on the importance of love, of compassion, on kindness, on respect. You may not experience that we as Christians live that way every day, but it's clearly how our teachings expect from us to live. The worthiness of all people, and nowadays we say all of creation, is also important. That all people have worth, and it doesn't matter from what religion you are, what race, nationality, social status, we all have worth, whether you are a child, whether you are an adult, and I'm glad to say that that teaching is coming through stronger and stronger. The importance to work not only for peace, but peace and justice is mentioned, and even in the Christian tradition in South Africa, we have a confession in the 80s, 84, and confirmed in 86 of the Bellar Confession, where we're making the important statement that our scriptures talks about justice as a task of the church. So it's not only just to say peace, but that we should also work for peace, unity, and together with it, justice. Forgiveness is an important understanding of our tradition, and is one of the central messages of our tradition, even if we are often not doing it as is required from And then also reconciliation. To bring reconciliation, to preach reconciliation, to make the world a better place. So from the perspective of our teachings, I believe that we in our tradition should work together with other religions, and that we should be able to, from our teachings and from our belief system, support peace and unity in the world and around us, also in George. Thank you.